Welcome to START Secondary Transition Team-Paced Resources and Training. This key component is planning for integrated competitive employment. My name is Kelly Rogers. In the next few minutes, we're going to cover Section 3 on high expectations and presuming competence. The impact of high expectations is so great that it's written in our special education law federally. So when we look at the federal law, there's 50 titles, and Title 20 is our education law, and there's 78 chapters in that Title 20. Chapter 33 is what we really know as IDEA, or special education law. There's a number of subchapters, etc., but if you go down to Section 82, subsection 1400 under findings and purpose, it states this: the implementation of this chapter, meaning chapter 33 or special ed law, has been impeded by low expectations and an insufficient focus on applying replicable research on proven methods of teaching and learning for children with disabilities. And we have a very long history of research in the area of high expectations, namely that as the adults in individuals' environments, what we believe they can achieve has a high correlation to whether or not they will achieve it. And of course, back in the day, back in the 60s, there was a lot of research that wouldn't even pass ethics committees in today's standards, where they would report to teachers incorrect IQ scores and incorrect achievement scores, so that teachers had certain expectations that were not accurate, and then measure actual achievement. And it resulted in kind of this term, the Pygmalion effect, which meant that we expect certain behaviors of others. When we expect certain behaviors of others, we're likely to act in ways that make those expected behaviors more likely to be true. There was some later research done in the 90s as well, specifically looking at students with disabilities, or really they called them low achievers, and found that high achievers, there tends to not be as much of an effect on high achievers, that high achievers sort of make it sometimes despite us. But the impact on low achievers is huge, that when low achievers have people around them that expect them to achieve higher, they make greater gains on standardized measures of achievement. And so, liken that to the world of transition and talking about employment. This was a statement by Peter Gerhardt, who does a lot of work in this area, that the potential of individuals with autism to become employed and engaged adults is limited more by the failure of the systems charged with supporting them than by the challenges associated for being on the spectrum. And we really focus the work on improving employment outcomes for individuals with autism with this in mind, that let's work on the system and build systems of support for individuals so they can achieve those high outcomes. And interestingly, when we look at the employment landscape for many individuals on the spectrum, or frankly with other similar challenges, is we tend to find that we're focused on getting them a job in the 4 F's. They're going to be working with food, they're going to be doing cleaning or working with filth, they're going to be working with flowers or kind of design type of stuff, or folding, they're going to be doing laundry. And so it's been titled in the field the 4 F's. And what we find is that, once we find that job, there's their career, and that's what they do for the rest of their lives. When for many others, we might start in these are great intro to work jobs, to learn the skills of work, but we don't tend to, or most people don't choose those things as careers. If they do choose those things for careers, that's great, but choosing for them that these should be the areas of career is what the problem is. So we really try to take a step back and always think that these are entry-level jobs that we're initially focused on, but long-term we're looking for employment that is a career that is built on that student's preferences and interests and matched with their skills. And this also is not a readiness model. Hear often things like, well, he's not ready for work. And I'm thinking, well, when I was 14 or 15 and getting my first paid job, I wasn't ready for work either, but because I was 14 or 15, I had the opportunity to go to work, and you learn to work by working. That's your right. And we should not hold kids with disabilities or kids with autism to a higher standard than that they have to be ready, but the rest of us just get to go do. And so we really talk about, whether we're talking about school or talking about employment settings, that there's really three curricula going on. At all times, we're working on skills, we're working on behavior, and we're working on social engagement. And that if one of these circles gets bigger than another, like, well, he can't go to work until his behavior's under control, or he can't go into general ed until we work on these skills and he has the skills to do it. When we start making these bubbles bigger than others and make them be in a readiness model, that we have to address it first before he has the right, we're down a problem path. And so we talk to it about, and I get it from a family's perspective, wow, it can be scary. We learn, all of us learn as much from failing as we do from succeeding. But we also go into sort of a protection mode when we're trying to support an individual with autism or other barriers to employment. And so we kind of go from this guiding principle that there's dignity in risk. That yes, we risk. We're going to put all the supports in place as we can to make things successful. But there is a risk that there could be failure. And I don't even like to think about the word failure. It's rather just, this isn't being successful right now. What do we need to do to make it more successful? We learn as much through that process, but that can be scary. And so we have to, focus our lens on, there's dignity in risk. There's dignity in taking a chance and working through the barriers to the ultimate goal of success. One of the tools for avoiding that readiness model is to presume competence. And it really is the least dangerous assumption. And that was a term that Anne Donnellan coined back in the 80s. And it really was a tool to help address some of the judgments or assumptions that she saw folks making about the potential of individuals with disabilities. And so it essentially says what? This presumed competence is no matter what limitations the individual might seem like they have, no matter what the skills are that they're presenting with, no matter what the tests say that we've done about what they can or can't do, that we approach a relationship with that individual presuming readiness to learn, presuming a willingness and an ability to learn and progress, and seeing that individual as having all of this potential. And when we enter relationships with individuals with those presumptions and those assumptions, it changes our thinking, it changes our practice. We persist more. If we really believe they can do it, we try harder, we persist longer, we react differently when progress isn't happening. We try again, we have this willingness to sort of experiment and re-experiment with the different strategies that are available to help individuals learn. So it changes our teaching style, it gives us more endurance. And so this is an overarching guiding principle to live by, or a tool to live by, that if we're going to enhance individuals' opportunities for integrated competitive employment, we have to approach our relationship with them with this least dangerous assumption, which is presumed competence. And interestingly, we have some research to help support that. One is, this is some research out of Vanderbilt University, that employment is therapeutic. That alone, having paid employment alone, resulted in greater independence and engagement, lower rates of behaviors that are associated with autism, lower rates of behavioral challenges, and increased rates of skill development in the areas of communication and social interaction. Just having work was treatment, if you will, for the challenges that may be experienced by some individuals with autism. And because of the skill set that many individuals with autism bring to the table, we now have employers who are seeking out individuals with autism. And this was a quote from one of the recruiters for Microsoft, that Microsoft is stronger when we have a diverse workforce that represents our customers. People with autism bring strengths that we need at Microsoft. Each individual is different, some having amazing ability to retain information, think at a level of detail and depth, or excel in math or code. And so we have many, especially in the area of technology, employers that are seeking out individuals with autism. And again, these tend to be jobs that we don't, as job developers or as folks supporting individuals to find careers and employment, we don't even consider some of these types of jobs. That takes us back to that concept of the 4Fs. We tend to have job opportunities in the 4Fs without any consideration really of these kinds of opportunities. And so we really have to ourselves, it's almost like we're the bigger barrier for them. We need to open our minds about what could be the potential for employment or career. This happens to be SAP as well, indicating that they have a program that they call Autism at Work. But what they see as some of the benefits of employing individuals with autism is that they're really good at repetitive tasks for long periods of time. They have superior attention to detail. They communicate honestly and bring new perspectives. You know, they're looking at the nature of many individuals with autism and seeing those things through the lens of benefit and strength rather than challenge. And even Walgreens has been doing research, in fact, for a number of years on employing individuals with disabilities, including autism. In fact, a man named Randy Lewis, who was high up in one of the distribution centers for Walgreens and had a child with autism and was sort of looking forward down the path about what was the future going to be like for his son in terms of employment, and looking around and thinking, we don't really employ a lot of people with disabilities. Like, why is that? And so he really, took it on to start hiring to the point where they had 40% of their workforce were individuals with disabilities, including autism. And it was working so well that he was trying to get other distribution centers to join in, and he was getting a lot of resistance. And people were saying things like, well, what about turnover rates? I think, don't individuals with disabilities have a high turnover rate? What about productivity? Aren't they less productive? And so there were all this misunderstandings that were occurring. And so he went out and, worked with some folks and did some research in the area. And what did they find? Over 4 distribution centers that they were studying, they found that there were higher turnover rates with people without disabilities. So that was like a debunked kind of concept or idea. Secondly, productivity rates, they found, this was across 31 locations and 3 distribution centers, that they were statistically insignificant between people with and without disabilities. Those were just people's misconception of what is truth. And so when they really looked at the distribution center that Randy Lewis was working in, what gave us this success? And these were some of the things that they were doing that resulted in that level of success, or or that the outcomes that they were having. One was they provided workplace some environmental accommodations and training. The interesting thing is they found that those benefited the people without disabilities too, that it made their business more efficient by putting in these accommodations and training to certain jobs. It created a welcoming and accepting culture overarchingly. What happens when you have a welcoming and accepting culture? You don't have as high absentee rates. People want to come to work. And so they found that as that side effect. They provided training and skills other than for the job. What they found for individuals with autism and other disabilities sometimes is their poor job histories had less to do with the skills to do the job as they did all of those, what we might call the other skills or the soft skills, like not clocking in on time and, not following the lunch protocol, or what do you do on break? It's all those other things that go along with work that are not the work itself. And so they really focused on that and did training on what those skills are for those other jobs or other expectations. They also recreated some of the job site activities that need to be done off-site, so that people could practice. So I would liken this to a transition program that might have what you would do in the distribution center in this particular section, they would recreate that off-site so the student could learn the skills before coming into the job site. And then they set specific productivity expectations and goals. And again, individuals rose to that occasion. And so because of that, now Randy Lewis is retired, and he has written this book, No Greatness Without Goodness. I strongly encourage, if you haven't had the opportunity, to pick this up and read it, because it really is a lesson in how do we change the business landscape to make this not something that we have to knock down doors to make happen, that we're seeing individuals for their contributions always and no matter who, and the benefit of that to the employer and to the employment agency. So take a minute. That kind of wraps up that idea of presumed competence and high expectations. And so if you'll jot down, what are you taking away? What's your most important points to this section? And we'll see you next in section 4 on conditions and strategies for employment. Thank you so much for your engagement in this session.